Morning.
There we go. Okay, we're going to call to order the November 29th Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. Lisa, if you would mind, can we take roll call?
Thank you. Chairman Esquaga,
Here.
Councilman Ivey. Here. Mr. Murdoch
Here.
and Mr. Chapman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Yeah, we're going to open it up for comments from the floor by the public. I don't know if we have anybody here for public comment. I know we do for an agenda item. Or anybody online.
No other public comment.
We're going to move over. Also, by the way, this is my first chairing of the finance committee, so I'm looking at Andy, Charles, and Ben to keep me in bounds and on the rail. So you're not offending me if you do. All right. I'd like to move this now to item C, approval of the agenda of Finance and Facilities Committee meeting for November 29th. Move approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Move to D, approval of the minutes of the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting past May 10th of 2022. A motion from Rick. Second. And second from Andy, all in favor? Aye.
I have to abstain because I was absent, so I wasn't in attendance, so I'll abstain from voting on the approval of the minutes.
No, there's abstention. Okay. Item E, and actually I will jump in on this. And I appreciate Ms. Farmer's quick adaptation to the agenda for the posting to kind of work with us on the wording. This is the discussion on the regarding the efforts by the Western Heritage Center Alliance. I want to go back, I think it was March of this year. Mr. DiLoretto presented it at the RSCVA retreat. A pretty expansive game plan and slide deck, and including, we were part of many other, I think, public jurisdictions that were shared the information of a concept for the RLEC working with the Western Heritage Alliance. The vision was shared. I think it was very well received by the RSCVA, and I think it was very well received by a number of our public partners. I know that they've taken it on the road. There's been a number of resolutions showing support for it. You know, that was less than a year ago, and I know that there's also been a number of variables that have changed, both with the project and just the landscape in general. I felt it really appropriate to come back to the Finance and Facilities Committee, just in our title alone, that if we're going to have further discussion with this effort, that this would probably be a great spot to start bringing the discussions of the key players to the table. I think as we've all viewed, and as we mentioned, there's been public sentiment for support. It probably deserves a bigger group to be reviewing this closer. There's a lot of complexities to this, as we all know. Different operating arrangements, there's state involvement, county involvement, RSCVA. We've got great partners with the Reno Rodeo, who is a key player with that facility. So we have a variety of stakeholders. My intent, and really, you know, as I've talked with Charles, my intent really of what we want to get out of this, hopefully, if there's agreement from the group, is really giving Charles and staff direction, possibly an exploratory committee to sit with the Western Heritage Group and the key members and really vet this out. There may be 2 or 3 options. There may be no interest on our behalf, but I think we really need to bring this discussion together. There are members of the group in-house. I know Mr. Torvinen is prepared to speak on behalf of the group, and I would like to have Mike, if you don't mind stepping up and you can make the presentation. I actually I don't want to cut them short, but pretty much that we don't need to go through the whole slide deck again. I think mainly it's really to kind of tee up where the project is moved from 7 months ago, A very high level walkthrough of the project. I know that we've been given kind of a one pager, which is great. And then really kind of talk about what their expectation is of the RSCVA and see if we can get some direction from this committee. So, Mr. Torvinen, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you very much. For the record, my name is Mike Torvinen, and I'm here as the treasurer for the Nevada Western Heritage Center Alliance. And I appreciate your time today. First of all, happy birthday, Mr. Heritage. I heard it's your birthday. Very briefly, the project's been split into 3 phases. In 2019, we received $1 million from the legislature, and the Reno Rodeo matched that $1 million, and we got to a 30% design of the project. And there's 3 phases. The first phase is what we're talking about today. The second phase is a new outdoor arena, and the third phase is the parking lot. And we just this has been around a while, and we had some clarifying comments on here. The $80 million price tag estimate was from August of 21. So we know there's been a lot changed since then. So we know that number is still very ballpark, but less ballpark than it was before. So we're very aware of that. One of the other things we wanted to point out that part of that $80 million projection was only about $2.3 million for the indoor arena, what we call the indoor arena. And that primarily is for exterior upgrades and some ADA compliant. I pointed out in the note on the lower right-hand side that in March of 2018, the State Public Works Board did a facility condition analysis out there, and that came up with about $16.4 million of deferred maintenance for the property, entirety of the property. 8.7 million of that was the indoor arena. And that's primarily a new roof, new HVAC, electrical upgrades, some significant upgrades to that building. So that's all part of the necessary work to that building to get it up to where we really think we can start selling it again and bringing people to town and getting some room tax revenue. I will point out that Reno Rodeos about a $50 million impact every year annually, and we think we can duplicate. If we can duplicate even a portion of that, 4 or 5 events that are even a part of that, we can have a significant impact. So our challenge now is finding the coalition of private and public entities to come up with the funding to go ahead and get started on this project. The blue part here is the phase 1, the upgrading the existing indoor arena, a new complementary arena, and a replacement of the exhibit hall. The exhibit hall out there was torn down because it was just beyond repair and everything. And that report from the Public Works Board had about $750,000 of deferred maintenance in just that building. And we all came to an agreement that we're better off just tearing that down. So here we are, the legislative session, the new administration. We're working very closely with the Lombardo team already. We think we've got we're very excited that Mr. Keykever was announced as chief of staff. We've been working with him quite a while, so we're excited about that. We're excited about the opportunity. And again, we think this is the coalition of all the local governmental entities, some private. The Heritage Center Alliance is committed to finding some private money, a significant amount of private money to help contribute to the project. So that's where we are right now. We hope we can start making steps to create that coalition and figure out what makes sense for everybody and how to contribute to the success of the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Torvinen.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So, you know, to go after the indoor arena. If you instantly hit that first, does that bring in, is there's a revenue opportunity indoors? Is it better for you guys or better for us to get more business if you fix the indoor first? Is that the whole idea?
I believe so, yes. And in combination with the exhibit hall, the new exhibit hall and the complementary arena, there's some opportunity for what I'll call value engineering in there to take another look at what we can see. You know, that planning money was what can we do? How can we make this a great facility? And maybe we got a little grander ideas than we should have, but at this point, we think that will generate some business. I'm personally following up, trying to dig into some local stuff. I'm, being a past president of Reno Rodeo, I'm kind of rodeo centric, but there are some regional type events that I think could come to Reno that are in Utah right now that, I think we could get that in Reno and, hopefully can have some conversations next week about that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I will say too, and this is where I think the importance of getting everybody around the same table weighs in. There's efforts identifying a lot of the deferred maintenance. There's also on Charles's part, I think a number of deferred maintenance jobs that have probably been addressed that are even in that list. So I think getting everybody around, the county plays a very key role into this as well. I know that, and again, not trying, I think there's been discussions with a number of entities. I think it's important to get everybody back around that table. I think, to your point, Rick, I think in Mr. Fairman, there's a number of pieces of business out there worth looking at that we could be talking to. But it's really kind of dividing and conquering and seeing how we're gonna put this together. I do think the state piece is gonna be key. And I feel very good too about, I think we've got a audience that is at least sensitive to some of the needs. I think wearing the RSCVA hat, we have to be realistic as to, there is gonna be a dollar ask at some point, and that's not today. But I think seeing where we can be included, there may be some expenditures that we would have to take care of anyhow, and some synergies that way. But Charlene, do you have any comments or questions?
Really, the project itself, I'm sold from the day that you guys first talked to me and brought it to the city of Sparks. And I've met with your group a couple of times, and it just, it's a huge lift, yes. But it's something that needs to happen, and it's something that the benefits, it's a win for everybody at the end of the day. So for the RSCVA side of it, obviously the more events that we can bring into town equals room nights, which is to benefit this organization, but also the economic impact of every single event, whether it's, a local event that people are coming, maybe they're not staying in a hotel, but the money's spent. So that economic, we always look at what the economic impact of an event is. And it's room nights plus everything, restaurants and shopping and all the spend and the sea tax. So those are all benefit the whole region, local governments included. And so and really for that area of town, the improvements and what that would bring to benefit the community, long range, you've talked about, the multi-use possibilities of what kinds of things could happen, whether it was youth sports, youth events. That's in the Hispanic corridor that Sparks with the Audi district going to Wells Avenue and the new improvements on that, on the Audi Boulevard, Wells Avenue corridor is all being improved. So the connector there for the Hispanic community, and we're looking at in Sparks, how do we tie in and really foster some opportunities for us from that side. I mean, it just has so many, the university, the university's partners too. So I just see there's benefits like across the board. Ultimately, for us, room tax and the economic impact of every event that compared to an old facility that is harder to rent. I mean, each year we go along and we're just kind of putting band-aids on things, still keep it safe, but it's not what it could be. And that is going to cost money to do that. So I guess what is the role RSCVA should play in this? And like Stephen said, obviously financially, we would have a piece of that. I don't know how much that is or what we can do on that end, but is it also us at the table as the operator? We don't own it and that becomes the complicated part of this is all the partners that are involved. Washoe County owns it. So how much are they invested in? And we're required by NRS to some of the CapEx and some of the maintenance were required as the operator, but Washoe County is the owner, and then the state owns the land. So, it's easy for everybody to just kind of point fingers, so, well, no, that's for you. No, you gotta take care of that. So all, well, no, we don't own it, but we do operate it. And we are, it's to our benefit. So I guess our role, do we, as the RSCVA, I think we do, need to have an important voice in promoting this, whether it's to the new governor, to the legislature, we go down to the legislature, lobbying efforts, to really see if there's some support, funding or support from the state or through the legislative process, through the governor himself. I think our voice is important as a major player in this. And I guess I would ask, what your thoughts are on an ask. I mean, is it an ask or do we get to this committee kind of look at it with Charles, kind of how we fit in besides hopefully some kind of financial piece of it? What else does this board and this organization do to help this happen? And you guys have a lot, you've got a great team and you've got, it's a heavy lift, but you've got the players there now, even if we weren't there. You've got a lot of business, private business, investment. There are people that are trying to push this, that I think, I know it can happen. I know it can happen because you've got the right people in place. What is our role? Would be my ask.
To be determined, I suppose, to the big extent, Mr. Thwaga mentioned the fact that the deferred maintenance is kind of, with all the governance structure that we have in place now, the county assumed the maintenance, and then with the management agreement between you guys and the county, that this body assumed the responsibility for the maintenance. So, but how do we really make sense of that? Do we go to the entire 16 million and say that's the number? No, it's not the number, because things have changed. Some things have happened already on that list. The bigger things, the roof, the HVAC, the electrical, that's still outstanding. And those to me are the major things for that indoor arena, which could then start generating some more revenue. But as we get together with every entity involved in this, what makes sense for everybody? I think we have to come together as a group and divide the ask up to what makes sense and what every entity is able to do. The mayor's talked about it, tourist improvement district downtown to generate some funding. That's not anywhere developed, but it's on the table still. So there's a lot of work to do with the legislature coming up. That the governance structure long term is going to have to be addressed somehow. And we recognize that, and I think the Western Heritage Center Alliance really has talked about how could we be involved in that and maybe be the entity that takes some of that on. And there's been talk of the airport authority like entity to run this facility. So lots of ideas being thrown out, but we do recognize that is an issue that will have to be addressed sooner or later. Sooner probably the better, because then we can put together a more cohesive and rational plan to move forward and accomplish the plan.
Charles? Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming down for the update. It's always good to see kind of where we're at and what's certainly the political landscape has changed and certainly the needs have changed, and there's a lot of moving parts. When we met earlier, certainly we want to play an active role. We support, doing this type of thing. The question really is, how much can we afford to contribute? And that's the devil's always in the details. But I think from being at the table and being part of those discussions, we look forward to being part of that, and we're ready to roll when you are. So
Appreciate that.
count us in.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That, we always are saying special events bring new blood. They put heads in beds, got some seats on airplanes, so forth. This is probably one of the greatest special events we've had, is the Reno Rodeo and that event and the cutting shows that spin off of it. This is such an opportunity to, if you fix it and you become known as we redid Reno, and you'll get all that business back that's left us because of the facilities, lack of maintenance. But I believe it's a special event, and that with you guys, always, you're looking for new events now, more so than we ever have, especially when you fix it. So I just want to reiterate, this is right in our wheelhouse for special events. And if they can spend, say, rodeo week or rodeo month becomes June, and then a cutting show, and then You know, you never know. And then you might have something in November that rivals the Vegas show, you know, there's a lot of things that this spins off as a special event. So I just want to remind people, we've already got one of the greatest special events that actually has seen an uptick. It's not like certain events that have seen a little bit of a downturn. So very positive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I could stand up here and tell you a lot of anecdotal stories about people that said, we will come there if you guys have a better facility. Horse groups in California that are tired of Central California, that type of thing. So there's a lot of potential out there, but that's really anecdotal. But it is nice to hear when you do hear.
Andy, do you have anything you want to add, or?
No, I think it's all great. I appreciate the presentation. I think what I understand the agenda that the committee is being asked to do a recommendation to the board for a full presentation, but it might be as a recommendation to the board for the RSCVA to participate in this collaboration group that will meet, because I think there's probably some more discussion that has to happen there before coming back to the board, because there's not an ask yet, because we don't know what that ask is.
I don't know that we need to go to the board for that, though.
Right.
This subcommittee could just say, we want you guys to participate, and right, Ben, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
That should-
we're stylized to take action just in case somebody wanted to, but we certainly don't have to. If you're happy to receive the information.
Direction to.
I think we should have a seat at the table and participate. That should be enough. Not to need to go to the board because there's not a direct ask for that. So we should be fine.
Perfect. Yeah.
I'm good with that. I think ideally, I don't know how the group feels. I think obviously Charles and staff, I don't know if there's any type of, what's the word I'm looking for? Exploratory committee, if you want to tap, I leave it open that if you want to tap into board or committee members. I think we just want to make sure that we're having these discussions in a timely, especially with that legislative window really very close. And again, not saying we're gonna go make a bunch of legislative asks, but it would be great to really know the map of, you know, we've got roughly, I don't know, 60, 90 days coming. There's things that we're living with that have been put into, it's nobody's fault here, but that have been put into effect 40, 50 years ago, that it'd be ideal if we're seeing some obvious things that we need some help changing, or I'm not even saying we can do it, but it would be great to really tap into all those resources. And so it'd be great if it sounds like we don't have to have an official motion, but I think Charles, you're clear and we want to.
Yeah, and I think what we do, Mr. Chair, is that we ask, when we do that legislative update in January, we can touch on that discussion at that point, ahead of the February legislation opening, to kind of get some direction to move forward with that, so.
I'm assuming, Mr. Corvina, and you and your group will also be reaching out to Charles, and as you're bringing parties to the table.
Sure, we are having those conversations, and I think the next big step is, getting some sort of commitment from everybody to start having the conversation together and seeing what we all can do.
Great, good.
Well, and I guess I would ask, obviously it'd be communication with Charles, but if we're in consensus today that we definitely do want a seat at the table, as chair of the RCVA board, I don't mind being also direct contact to whether it's meetings or whether it's whatever you're doing.
That'd be
You're
great.
working with Charles, but if you want representation, I'd be more than happy to do that. Unless the other committee members.
No, I think that's great. Rick, did you have something? you wanna-
You know, it's interesting, you brought up the airport authority, and what I had sat on that for 8 years, what I loved about it was it was funded by PFCs and usage. It got funded by usage. You know, it's something different to look at. You've got a great idea if you become a rodeo authority or whatever it is, Western Heritage Authority, that, that's how they get funded. And then they go after, obviously, federal monies because it's an airport.
Mhm.
But the point is, that's an idea, to figure out how to fund it. That again, the PFCs have been, it helps that airport do a lot of things.
Right.
Matching funds, so
Yeah.
forth for federal funds.
Yeah,
So
we'll
thoughts.
explore any opportunity for sure.
Yeah.
I'll have to attribute that to Mr. Dioretto. He's the one that kind of had the thought on that, so.
Good idea.
Well, thank you, Mr. Corvina, for your time. And I definitely, this is not I see, we meet, but every 3 months.
Yeah.
So it'd be great, as we kind of push to really try to bring this together and let's see if we can be talking in 3 months from now, but in the meantime, we'll be on our end trying to work with you to be at the table.
Great, thank you. Appreciate your time. I should introduce Clint T.C. He's part of the board of the Western Heritage Center Alliance. You know this one, Michelle. And Mike Wilden has been helping us. He was former chief of staff to Governor Sandoval, but he's been very instrumental helping us do a lot of these meetings and discussions. So we'll be in touch. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to E2, review discussion, possible action to approve funding for the Incline Village, Crystal Bay Card Connect Micro Shuttle Project. I just forgot what card stood for with. I know it's the transportation.
That transit.
There you go. All right, perfect. Mr. Chapman, would you-
The Fresno area. Just say,
I got it.
just, oh, that's live. I don't know if this is me or not.
Yeah, I think it's to you.
I
Kind of just
could
recap.
recap a little bit. So as the committee members know, in the September meeting, we presented along with Commissioner Hill and I think there's somebody else in the audience now, but about the Target Connect, which is the micro transit. Just as a quick reminder, we're in the second year of a 2-year pilot program. There are 3 zones, 5 zones, if you look at some seasonality, but zone 3, which is in the Incline Crystal Bay area, has been funded locally through a variety of different mechanisms. Our board, the Travel North Tahoe board, has put in almost 400,000 in the last year and a half. The RSCVA board did approve 250,000 of the $350,000 ask, with the caveat or the direction that this committee review the Q1 collections and then contemplate a recommendation based on those Q1 collections to the full board for the additional 100,000. We are still in need of that 100,000. We're actually still in need of about 65,000 as well. Just as a recap, RTC came up with some additional funds of $290,000 this year. Washoe County, through again Alexis Hill and her efforts, had 100,000 put into the county budget this year. We had 50,000 from the Tahoe Fund. We've got 50,000 from our organization, and then again we're still funding about another 50 to 65,000 that we will get locally. That is contemplating the full 350 from this organization as well. And again, I won't go into a lot of the detail because you got that as at the board in September. I know we have another item coming up next year. I will just point in the packet just real quick on page. Aren't numbered, but there is an item that talks about appropriate. And that's we basically split the 6%, 6.5%, or you could probably tell me what the actual percentage is, but we split that amount. It looks like the first quarter collections came in about $265,000 over budget. And obviously, 265,000 is going to us, but 265,000 also stays within the general fund of the RSCVA. So obviously that is above the budget. So there are, in my opinion, some sufficient funds sitting in there to cover that additional 100,000. That's the request for this committee to contemplate and then provide a recommendation to the board. So I believe that is where we're at, and we appreciate the consideration. This is an important element, as I'll talk to you individually, as well as the presentation that I did in September. It is critical for Tahoe, and it is working. It is still highly utilized. I think we're hitting almost 9 passengers per hour right now, which if you look at any transit, you look at all of RTC's transit, it's by far one of the highest production in the region and beyond. So with that, I don't know if there's any conversation from a budget standpoint. That's kind of our next item. Right. So
any questions or comments?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. So Andy, remind me when your pilot ends. Does it take you through next spring?
it takes it through June 30, 2023.
Okay. so next June, so through this fiscal year,
this fiscal, yeah,
okay.
that'll be the end of the 2-year program.
And then you said it's 9 passenger, averaging 9 per hour on passengers. Are you finding, since last time you reported with us, I know that there seem to be a lot of locals that were using it, which obviously the benefit there is getting locals to work. Or you can't operate the restaurants and the businesses that those locals work at, so.
And off the road as well, those cars off.
Getting those cars off the road and also providing that. Have you found much use by tourists that are there, or are you guys really, are you tracking it?
Well, we do, based on those that participate in the survey. So there's always that caveat with that research. Not everyone is, taking the survey that they get on their phone because it's app based. So once you do a ride, you get the, hey, please take the survey. Is a visitor taking that survey to the same frequencies as the locals, but it's about 20%, 22%, visitor usage. Obviously, in the fall and the spring, the hours change from 6 to 10 midweek and 6 to midnight, Friday and Saturday. So, it's not the full 16-hour day like we see, but winter program starts up here on December 9th, and that's back to the full 16 hours with an additional 2 hours on Friday and Saturday. So we'll go to 2 a.m. connecting the Crystal Bay Entertainment Corridor back, and that actually is going to be funded by the Crystal Bay Casino. So private funding coming in.
Do you have an estimate on how many, what the carbon impact was, or how many? I don't know if that's been measured, but kind of an estimate on how many cars are not on the road now because of this, because of turn off.
Well, I don't have that on my fingertips. I know that we are well over 240,000 rides in claim zone 3 alone, which is about almost 45% of total North Shore ridership. So the Incline Crystal Bay zone is, does see the largest amount of that ridership. Now, what does that relate in carbon imprint, things like that? I could probably look into that, but I don't have that.
Okay, yeah, just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, Mr. Chapman, so I think that when the board made the commitment to do the 250, I think was the right thing, that we participate and be active. It's the absolute right thing to do. In the time that has taken place since that September, was there any other visitation going back to those other organizations asking to help make up, or was the whole plan to come back to here to ask?
Well, as I mentioned, we still have a deficit, we still have a gap that we are still looking for, which would include funding from, our side of the TOT as well, again, on top of the almost 400,000 that we've already put into it. The Tahoe Fund, this will probably be their last time funding it. We did go back to the League to Save Lake Tahoe because they had funded the prior year, but they're investing funds in the South Shore Transit, micro transit project that's on down there. Right now that need is still there for that 100,000.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we exhausted options to have the county or RTC come back with a little more to help put a dent in that 100.
It's always worth more conversation.
And then is it, Mr.
Yes.
Isn't Alexis on the RTC, or is she?
Yes, she will be. I
Oh,
believe.
good.
I think she
We've
starts.
got- we've
January.
We've got a voice. I mean,
Good.
like, Andy, you've got, are you getting more hotel rooms up there? Is what's the, do you have a prognostication of how many more, because you drive a lot of revenue, obviously, up there with your room taxes.
So
Super high.
the Biltmore project is probably not going to see anything until a minimum of 2026, right? More like 2027. It's anybody's guess what's happening with the Calneva. I think the ownership of the Calneva is more interested in their ownership in the Hyatt. And so we are going to start seeing some, I don't think they're huge impacts, but the Hyatt South Shore or South property will shut down starting April of 23 for 2 years, which includes the Lone Eagle Grill, the beach, and all of the cottages for a big 2-year renovation in that area. So they're not going to be able to drive the room rates, because actually those cottages are huge on room rates. I mean, those are $1,000 night rooms, in the summertime. And obviously the Lone Eagle Grill departure as well as beach access is gonna diminish their ADRs according to talking to the GM, because it's on my board up there. So, and then once they're done with that, they're gonna move to the tower. Yeah, but they'll do that phased, so that impacts there. But so I think in the short term, we're actually gonna see some truncation of that. And then, if we can get the built more, up and running, which will take some time. That's an old building that still needs to be torn down. And nothing's gonna happen with the county anytime soon.
Good, okay, good. But you're really just trying to relieve, you guys are trying to really relieve the cars on the road because of your tourism side just gets so busy up there.
Yeah, it's, as I mentioned in the presentation back in September, it's one of our stewardship and sustainability pillars. I know the RSCVA now participates in the Stewardship Tahoe Council, and we appreciate that support there as well. Because we are all sitting around the table trying to figure out how do we manage that destination. And again, it's not just tourism oriented impacts, it's visitor oriented impacts, it's residential, it's second homeowners, it's workforce, all those things. So this is a piece of that puzzle. And I do want to mention as well, as we move into fiscal year 23-24 in July, the idea of working with Placer County, because now there's, the reason why they did the pilot program, they kind of funded it that way. It's outside of federal money. There's no federal money that is going to this project across the California, Nevada side. Because in order to get those federal dollars for transportation, you have to do certain criteria. The drivers have to be certain, license elements. You have to go through a bidding process. So we didn't do that, but now we are going to. There's a conversation about bringing the infrastructure in-house through Placer County, which would be the vehicles, the maintenance of the vehicles, all that, and maybe hiring out drivers. So, right, starting basically next month or probably in January, a group of us are going to get together to start talking about what do these next couple of years look like, because we do have the opportunity to go after federal funds. Which would include the Nevada side as well, with RTC at that table. So obviously, as a pilot program, that was the whole idea, see how it works. It's been very successful. Obviously, we've seen Truckee bring it up. It's expanded on the North Shore. Truckee started it, South Shore started it, and South Shore is expanding it. And of course, we see it in Reno and Sparks already has some versions of microtransit. And the whole idea is to discuss how does mainline service interact, because right now, mainline service does its thing, and the TART Connect does its, right? So they're kind of been operating independently. Yet both, the ridership on TART Connect didn't cannibalize the ridership on mainline service, actually it increased. So you're actually, because if you're trying to go further, like if I want to go from Incline to Olympic Valley, I'm not doing that on TART Connect, I might be taking the mainline service. So we're having discussions about how that whole thing operates together. And this gets us through to the end of that June 30 period.
I did, and you refresh my memory. I was trying to remember back to the September meeting of what the intent was of board when we approved the 250. And I think, it was hinged upon, okay, if we're trending in the right direction, I think the group was open for going to the full 350 for the additional 100. I'm inclined to support it. I do think, I'm just being honest, I think, it's a Band-Aid. I think we're getting you there to this. I'm curious where the study comes out afterwards. When you talk about, and again, I don't want to get into the minutia of carbon footprint and all that, it's over my head. You're not eliminating the trip. The trip is being made, it's just being made by a driver and it's being subsidized.
You're co-mingling trips.
You're hoping that you're getting some efficiency for that,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
There are single runs,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, you're really hoping that you're getting a 2 or 3 location synergy to save a trip.
And we do have that information.
Yeah.
I apologize, I don't have it in front of me right now. I could probably dig it out of my phone here, but we do see the passenger. I mean, obviously from a passenger per hour, we know what that is averaging, and it peaks and it valleys as well, but it does give you the number of co-mingled trips.
Okay.
In that
No,
conversation.
that'd be great to see, because I think that's where the assumption is that you're saving, is that you're getting some efficiency with more than one group. But I think with the intent from the last meeting, I would be in support of doing it for this run. This is a complex, this is gonna be, obviously, it's much more in your world, Andy, of what's gone on, but it does affect us down here as well. How we're moving people, how we're moving the 5 million visitors to Reno. And I think down the road, probably long after we're all here, the discussions are gonna be, it's gonna get that much more critical. And I know I shared with Charles and I talked to Andy on, I know there's NDOT discussions on road design, all these factors that really impact. This is a tourism destination, so.
It seemed, I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, but you know, if you do lose those hotel rooms, you're just gonna have the demand up there still be super high because of, is it what, bed and breakfast or rentals?
Yeah, there's short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals.
When you look at the RSCVA breakdown.
There's some opportunity for our CBA still to capture revenue, so
They're just gonna go someplace
it's
else.
just gonna go somewhere else out, and it's gonna create demand. Because of, you know,
And for us to be able to point to our community and saying, one of the things we have put our flag in the ground as a organization with our partners, including our CBA, is, how are we mitigating those impacts? And yes, the residents are using it, but also, visitors are using it. So when they are in a community or they're in a neighborhood at a short-term rental, they do have that opportunity to use that
but
vehicle.
you're actually bringing the south side of Reno to Incline Village, technically. You know what I mean by that? People will have to, they can't stay at Tahoe, they have to come down here and if I stay at the terminal, if they want to drive to Tahoe or stay down in this neighborhood, so we still get the benefit of.
Yeah. This is but one element in a very broad
Right.
transportation management plan that
Yeah.
the Tahoe Transportation District and the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency are underway. And as this group does, I do sit on that Tahoe Transportation District Board as our North Shore TNA representative.
I'm totally in support of this. I think it's crucial with good partners. We need the lake's part of our name. It's a good thing.
You wanna,
Mr. Chair.
go ahead.
I just had another comment. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, we look at the majority of our marketing for Reno Tahoe. Well, it's Tahoe, and that's the gem that draws so much of our tourism to the area. And we do have a responsibility to protect that from an environmental standpoint, but as much from the economic impacts to our region with protecting that crown jewel of our region is, our responsibility too. So I think the benefits of this for trying to address that, for getting people around the lake, for getting people to work. It's not huge impact, but it is an impact that's moving in the right direction. Can you blame me on the, because I can't find it in here, how much more revenue that your room tax generated?
So if I'm reading this correctly, I believe it's 265,000 in Q1 that above budget that went to the RSCVA general fund, because it's the same amount that my budget was increased as well. So I think it's 265 in Q1.
Right, so 265 is half of the 6.65% that we calculate, that we collect in Washoe that goes to the general fund. There's still additional percentages to that are distributed to other entities, but RSCVA's portion was the 265.
So above what was budgeted.
Exactly.
So that makes it pretty easy if we're asking for 100 and we're 265 above what we originally budgeted. That
I think that was,
fiscally is irresponsible.
yeah, I believe that was the intent of the board's direction, was to look at that, to see where we were, have a discussion. And go back.
Your rates are only gonna go up. I mean, when you don't have those for 2 years anyway, so it should be good tax, possibly good tax.
So we're a little bit certain of the beach going the way to Hyatt.
Yeah. Well, find a new.
So Mr. Chair, are you looking for a
I
motion?
am.
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
Like to make a motion on the recommended approval request by the RSCVA Board of Directors to travel North Powell, formerly Incline Village, Crystal Bay Visitors Bureau to provide additional funds for the FYI 2022-23 TART connection Incline Village Crystal Bay Zone 3 micro shuttle project in the amount not to exceed $100,000.
I'll second that
So
motion.
I think it's an amount to equal 200,000, not
Yeah.
not to exceed, so the amount of 100,000.
Yeah, hold on, okay, amount, I'd like to correct that to amount of 100,000. Thank you.
I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. What is that? Four?
It's a recommendation to the board, right?
Right, we're happy with that on the January agenda for approval then.
Thank you for that consideration.
Thanks, Andy, appreciate it. We'll move on to E3. Charles, I'm gonna let.
Yep, on second.
Not just like that.
Oh, sorry, December board.
Okay.
Not January, December.
Yeah, you have time for it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to E3, Charles' presentation, discussion of potential approval of a proposed budget augmentation in the amount of 6.527261 for the Reno Sparks Convention Business Authority.
Yep, so I'm gonna set it up here before turning it over to Courtney. As we've been doing now for a while, we agreed to meet quarterly to discuss possible budget augmentations based upon revenues collected and projections. Last year at this time, there was about a $7 million augmentation that was approved by the subcommittee and ultimately by the board. This time, we're looking at about $6.5 million for that augmentation. Courtney's gonna walk through the presentation, kind of where we're at, and I will step on toes, hopefully not too many, is just add into her presentation. And Brenda's here to talk about facilities as well as we prioritize where about half of that money that we are recommending that's going to go to. Courtney, turn it over to you.
Great. Hello, Courtney Jager, Vice President of Finance. The purpose of this agenda item is to review the details of a proposed budget augmentation. We're required per Nevada revised statutes to submit a budget augmentation to the state of Nevada to spend in excess of our originally budgeted expenditures. And as you're aware, the Finance Committee will serve in an advisory capacity today regarding this budget augmentation. This augmentation will not be effective until the related resolution is approved by the Board of Directors. And if approved today, we would present this augmentation to the board on December 8th. The presentation today will be structured as follows. We'll talk about the revenues and resources that will fund this budget augmentation, and we'll review in detail the proposed expenses in the budget augmentation by category. And I'll go ahead and move through this presentation at a good pace, but feel free to stop me anytime and ask questions. So our proposed budget augmentation today is slightly over $6.5 million. This augmentation is primarily funded by revenues that have exceeded budget during the last 2 quarters. So here we have a summary of Q4 fiscal year 22 revenues and Q1 fiscal year 23 revenues. In total, these revenues were about $5.6 million in excess of budget, and the remainder of what we are requesting in the budget augmentation consists of expenses that came in under budget. And for our budget to actual differences, room tax revenues and facility revenues make up the majority of those differences. So first, we'll go into more detail regarding the most recently completed quarter. So here we have Q1 fiscal 23 revenues broken out by month. Room tax revenues are 70% of the budget to actual difference here. So we'll spend a little time looking more closely at the trends that are impacting those room revenues. So as you can see, the increases in total taxable room revenues are being driven by ADR. So if we compare fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 22, you'll see that ADR is up 8% and the number of occupied rooms is down 1.9%. Here we have a breakdown of total taxable room revenues by market segment. In terms of percentage growth, vacation rentals are performing really well. Vacation rentals are up over 48% compared to the prior year. And this increase is primarily driven by occupancy. Last year, we had a worse fire season than we did this year, and the fire season last year impacted occupancy in that category. The hotel segment's also up compared to last year, and that's driven by ADR since occupancy was down slightly. So now we're going to talk about how we're proposing to spend those funds. This presentation incorporates the amounts for TARP Connect that we just discussed. So the majority of our spending will occur in capital, with marketing being the second highest category. We'll look at each of these categories in more detail. So with this budget augmentation, we're proposing to add $3.2 million to our capital budget. We have Trent Leferrier here, our Vice President of Facilities, and he'll talk a little bit more about the more significant projects on this list, and this list is also in your board packet.
You ready?
Yeah.
So just a few items, hit some of the big number ones. We're looking at paving over at the convention center. And this would be the east side and the south side of the parking lot, because it's in pretty poor shape and deteriorating. We slurried it about 6 years, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And it's due for paving. The exterior doors that you see on there is again for the convention center, and they're in 22 plus years of age and abuse, and they need to be repaired and some replaced. Staging, the risers, the AV equipment, that's all interior stuff for the betterment of our clients, because we're running into shortages on equipment. And we want to upgrade that, so we're not rushing to change one room to another room and then back to another room, so we can have a better operating facility. E-charging, we have no facility over there, and that's a big deal on charging vehicles. So we've got a spot over there where we want to put in 4 to 6 slots for rapid charging of e-vehicles. Go over to RSLEC, we're looking at a mini excavator that is going to save us a lot of money in the long run from renting equipment. Footing replacement is the fancy dirt in the indoor arena for some of the horse shows. And that's kind of a regular replacement deal. The power bolt is in the main arena, and that is going to upgrade our abilities to supply clients coming in with the power needs that they request. And right now, we're just on the borderline of being able to do that because the equipment is so old, as a lot of things are over there. Digital drawings. We are still working off of paper on probably 90% of all of our drawings on all of our facilities, which is not good. Down at the event center, we are looking at doing repairs and maintenance to the suites, the dressing rooms, and the green room, because they're aged and they show it. And that will help us draw in clients for either renting the rooms, leasing out the suites, just upgrading them that they need. There's a number of things. I mean, if anybody has any questions on any of these items, I'm open.
By the way, these items are in addition to the budgeted items annually that was approved by the board based upon our $3 million budget, as well as the additional $2.8 million that was approved in the shuttered grants venue, which has already been sent through the board as well. So this is in addition. And part of this reflection, why we're suggesting or recommending putting 50% of it into this is the past operators that we terminated that agreement with. There wasn't a whole lot of investment in those properties, and all of our properties are in need, and we are addressing those needs through this additional augmentation for those properties.
So Charles, total, what would you say then for the year?
Total with all this, it will be more than $9 million in the current fiscal year. So there was a one sheeter that was not part of the packet, but that was put on your desks to go through that. What we did is Courtney helped put together a list of annually what was actually spent, not what was budgeted, what was actually spent by fiscal year. And if you look at it, the proposed combination of all three of those will lead us to the biggest investment in our facilities since 2003. And that is a tremendous message for the community and to make that commitment. And actually, this is all needed stuff. And Trent and Jose did great work in prioritizing what the needs are and to go through. There's still certainly more things we want to do, but based upon the resources we have, these are the most urgent and the most impactful for the facilities.
That's great. Real positive message. Real quick question too, just so like on staging and risers, I mean, we're renting that also, right? I mean, it generates revenue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the package
Right.
when a client comes in
Right.
that is chargeable.
Right.
And your AV. obviously.
Yeah, and right now, some of our AV equipment, we are actually renting out.
Right.
So it becomes an income stream.
Yeah, we have
But-
somebody coming in to service that for us that we can't do right now, so we need to upgrade our equipment.
But when it comes to the risers and the other areas, if the team's got to break down and move things from one night to the next, or if we're gonna stack and have multiple events in the facility at the same time, we need the resources, right? And that's just staying competitive to be able to service clients. So it's something that we highly recommend. It's great.
There's no more questions on capital. We'll move on to the remainder of the budget augmentation. The next is marketing. We're proposing to add $1.4 million to the marketing budget. 70% of that will be used towards digital advertising. And we'll also be adding additional resources related to marketing our facilities, since increasing our efforts related to marketing the facilities has been a priority since the facilities transition. So with this augmentation, we would increase our venue advertising, our facilities marketing programs, and promotional signage. We'd also add additional dollars for influencer marketing and partnerships, building on the successes that have been seen in those areas. We'll also be adding amounts for personnel costs, which would include adding 1 FTE to the marketing department. And there are smaller amounts being added for sponsorships, registrations, and other costs.
By the way, the one thing, if I can add Courtney into this, just for your confirmation, this additional dollars would take us on the marketing budget past the 2019 pre-COVID budgets that we had set up. So we're putting money back into marketing. That's part of what we do. So great.
Great. So next we'll talk about the facilities. Facilities revenues have exceeded budget in the first quarter by $630,000, and we're proposing. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I go back? The sales department, did you give them any money?
We have.
So yep, sales.
We haven't done that
Next, I'm just going in order of size.
Oh, it says
So-
marketing and then sales.
Yeah, so marketing and sales, they roll up into the same functional category on the budget information
Okay.
we have to present to the state, so.
I'm
here-
just sales centric.
It's group,
Yeah.
it's group together.
That's where I came. Thank you.
We will never ignore sales. We are a sales organization.
Right, that's, yeah, they produce the
And
revenue.
we can talk about sales before facilities if you.
No,
prefer.
no,
Okay.
don't, I'm sorry, I just didn't,
No, no worries.
go ahead.
All right, so we'll talk about facilities. So facilities revenues exceeded budget by $630,000, and we're proposing to invest those revenues back into the facilities. The highest priority for the facilities are personnel costs. To ensure adequate staffing levels at our facilities, the facilities will be focusing on costs for full-time employees, part-time employees, and temporary labor. It's still a difficult market for our facilities positions, and we're finding that we really need to stay flexible and competitive. A portion of this augmentation would also go towards repairs and maintenance costs. These are expenses that aren't capitalized and are more of what's required day to day to keep the existing equipment and existing infrastructure functional. And one thing that's important to note is that the previously approved loss figure for the facilities would not be increasing with this augmentation. We're just primarily funding this with facilities revenues.
So Courtney, real quick on that, so the incoming, is it because we have, maybe that's for you. We're booking more events, we're making sure, like the bowling center especially, has more events and driving more revenue, because we've been at a negative for all our facilities. We have 630,000 above what we anticipated, strictly really from use of our facilities.
Right, so it's a portion of things. So part of it is due to facility rentals, which is, groups and organizations coming in and paying those rental fees. It's also due to AV, setup and use fees, more parking revenues. So the ancillary revenues that go out with having the building occupied more too. So it's a combination of those revenues, and we need increased personnel to staff those demands.
That makes sense.
And I'd also say, in a nod to the team, it's also efficiencies that we're realizing by bringing it back in-house, where we can save money in areas. So that helps as well.
That's all good news.
And also, it's all good news.
Yes.
Next is sales. So for the sales department, we're adding $354,000. $100,000 of this will go towards increasing booking incentives. We're also adding partnership marketing programs and 1 additional FTE to the department, in addition to other personnel costs. This budget augmentation will also go towards a new standalone sales mission in the Pacific Northwest. And we'll be adding a vehicle for the sales department to utilize for local trips, including site inspections, familiarization trips, and just some other smaller expenses, including registrations and partnerships.
Let me ask you a quick question on that one.
Yeah.
Just on the increased booking incentives at 100,000, is that just adding more dollars to that incentive program, or is it changing the incentive program that those sales groups have the opportunity to grow?
Adding more dollars. So the sales department has committed more than they had anticipated for booking incentives. So that replenishes some of those commitments and then gives them that contingency fund to work with.
And Andy, that specifically is in the year for the year, meaning it's between now and the end of June. If the sales folks said we needed 200,000, we would probably come back with a higher level to that. I certainly don't want to put dollars in there that are going to go for FY24 because that's in fund balance that doesn't. So what I've asked from the sales team is give me a 5-year forecast of what you're committing to. It helps us at the start of the negotiations to make sure those dollars are leveled up to the beginning.
Charles, on the FTE spot, so what, like pre-COVID, where we at?
Yeah, so we're I really don't want to compare pre-COVID because the dynamics have changed and the needs have changed. But what sales has been asking for specifically, they asked for a couple of areas that will support their further areas. What I'm recommending is that we're going to add an additional destination experience manager, which is going to help support when people are coming in. That's for business development. And what we're doing around supporting the new business. So it's adding that. What I am not recommending at this moment is additional administrative assistance. I think our sales team works hard. And we're doing that, but based upon the uncertainty of where we are in the economy and possible acceptance, I don't want to make that long-term commitment on the administrative assistance. So we're not fully back where we were in the sales, but we've also kind of rejiggered our priorities where we're at, but absolutely they need support in that sales area. We've been taking people around in vans when they come to visit for a site visit. We need a dedicated car that will take them out. Destinations manager will help them as well. An additional person when people are coming in. It'll actually help us save money so our salespeople don't have to fly in all the time to do that. So that's kind of where we're putting our resources that supports that area.
I mean, are we adding, Charles, you said we're not pre-219.
Overall in the overall FTEs for the organization, correct.
In the organization, not in sales.
Both were under where we were. So we were either 52 or 55 pre-COVID. And we're still under that overall, and sales is down a few, but it's mostly in that administrative assistant areas. Other than that,
They don't need any other sales.
Well, they're always going to ask. They're always.
We always wanted to.
I've never heard a sales guy that does it.
Is it
But we also haven't added additional in tourism. And from that, it's the OTAs and what we're doing in there, they're doing a phenomenal job. But we're where we need to be on the leisure side, and we're gonna fund programs versus the people on that. We're still adding people where it makes sense and where we can house it as well. So it's a balance that we're making. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next category, finance, general and administrative and other costs. So included in this category are the amounts for the Tartan Connect micro shuttle project. The board previously approved $250,000 towards the project on September 2nd, and we're officially adding those expenses to our budget with this augmentation. And since the finance committee has conditionally approved the additional $100,000 towards that project, we'll include it in this budget augmentation when it's presented to the full board. If the full board does not approve that $100,000 for Tart Micro Connect, then we would use those amounts towards digital advertising in the marketing department. So other items in this category include IT projects, some of which are supporting the facilities post-transition, like purchasing small equipment and software licenses. We're also increasing our initiatives in areas like cybersecurity. We're also adding estimated anticipated costs related to the master plan contract, and other items in this area include services and supplies and personnel costs.
So Courtney, the 507 doesn't include the 350 to TARC is in there already, and if the board doesn't approve the 100, then you're shifting it into IT.
We would reclass that 100 into marketing for digital advertising. So we would take it out of this category and put it in there.
Okay, just want to make sure it's thinking.
Absolutely.
How how is our digital, is the marketing, how much have we given the advertising? basically.
So we're giving them an extra million with this augmentation, so adding that 100,000 would make it 1.1 million. That's only if the chart connect isn't approved by the full
And
board.
just so that the subcommittee is clear, I go through and I meet with each individual head of the department, and I ask them for a wish list. What's your wish list? What's the priorities? We go through and then we rank that, and then we try to fit that basically in the budget for what we have. So each individual department has an opportunity to voice what their needs are, and then we kind of parcel it out based upon priorities.
On the additional 1 million, what are you targeting that for? What's that gonna, is it just?
You can go back and review that.
So the
That's
$1 million in the marketing department. So are you asking what marketing?
Yeah,
is
what
going
are you
to
gonna
use
do
that
with that extra million? Where's it going? Just curious.
We can have Christina provide more detail on that. I don't have the detailed marketing's plan for that. I know it sounded like they were moving it towards spring and summer initiatives, but I don't have the detail of their plan, but we could definitely provide that.
Be nice,
That is
because
part
I
of
think
this.
somebody's gonna ask that.
Yeah, Rick, let me kind of, I can go through some of this. So some of it's going to facility signage, some of it's going to replenish a little bit of the special events that from an execution standpoint, FY, it's getting us back to the 500 that we need. We're going to put $100,000 into influencer marketing, which is a combination of new events. We've actually gone through the budget. It's been very, very successful, but we need additional dollars. Part of that is also the Bring It Home campaign for the local marketing to the local market. Destination stewardship sponsorship that we put in with Andy, it funds that. The facility marketing and what we're trying to do with the facilities to align our brand, which again, that hasn't been done. So that's a huge chunk of it, which hasn't been touched, which we need to align all the branding. So whether it's,
How do you mean like?
it goes into physical signage, it goes into the uniforms for the employees. There's a lot of things that we need to clean up, which was all over the place with ASM. So that's needed.
Is that a operational side expense, or is that a?
No, it's a marketing and a branding piece of that. Then there's also the Tahoe Fund, in addition to destination stewardship. There's some meeting expenses and registrations that all get rolled into that.
If there's no questions on any of the previous slides, we'll move on to the slide regarding the apportionment. Like Andy was mentioning, legislation requires that 1/2 of the proceeds received from transient lodging and Incline Village in Crystal Bay are remitted back to Incline Village, Crystal Bay. And so for the first quarter, those exceeded budget by $265,000. That I'll go ahead and open up for any questions.
I have one quick one, and again, this is just more, I think, housekeeping with, when Andy, the last meeting when we did approve the 250, and I think you suggested, look, why don't we take it out of rainy day for now?
Yeah.
And again, this is kind of just what bucket it falls in. Has rainy day been replenished then?
That's
Right,
part of
so
the
that's
this
what we're
is-
doing with
okay,
this
got it.
augmentation.
All right,
So that the augmentation that will replenish the rainy day fund, which is what we took it out of, which gets us back on track to 1.4, which a goal of adding an additional $200,000 this year, which gets us to 1.6 million
In the rainy day.
in the rainy day. Yeah. Which is a 60% increase over the last 2 years in total dollars.
I do think for the board meeting in December, again, if we have a motion to approve this, I could see the question being on a little more drill down on that marketing piece of just how much goes to digital, how goes,
Yeah.
I think, yeah,
very forward.
I agree with you there, Stephen, and that the board will have, I'm sure they'll ask the sales questions, and they always do, so. And possibly might, what might be good is what's in store for us in the next, this next physical year. We're in it now, but we know after January 1st, we've got some opportunities coming in that I know the bowlers are coming, you've got some opportunities, so things that you've done, Charles, that are driving the revenues is I think that we're going to want to hear what events, what new things, what, good to go along with this, so they can, right, you've got the money, but they want to, where's it?
Well, I do think, that's positive. We've seen all along, right, ADR has really carried the
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
that last snapshot was positive because the occupancy was basically flat.
Yeah, we're flat, we're basically flat, which basically means that the one thing that we were worrying about from a marketing standpoint is losing a little bit of market share once California opened up, coming out of COVID. Because we saw a nice bump of people coming here while that was down, and the good news is we haven't lost really any market share, so that part has been very, very positive. As most of you know from the CEO reports that I send out, the leisure has really carried us through this. But unfortunately, as we've seen in some of the local press, that's now happening, that we still anticipate a softening when it comes to business and meetings based upon anticipation of a recession, and still inflation is high. So it's still not clear when it comes to that. But the point that we've seen, I think we're about 80% of the plan right now on the meetings and the conventions for the first 4 months of the year. So we're trending well. One piece of business hadn't hit, or we would have been over 100%. We, according to the sales team, they expect that to hit this month, which gets us back on track to over 100% of our total group room nights.
So as we're looking, obviously in our crystal balls, for where which none of us really know where the economy will take us after the first of the year and into the spring, we are, I would guess, marketing is really looking at targeting that tourism market, because we know the softening seems to be happening, and most of the groups and the business and all that books way out anyway. They're not in January booking for April. That's already done, but we will know as soon as we roll into the next year how those bookings and the impact on our facilities and that revenue is, because they're going to be booking for a year out or.
Yeah, and just to circle back again, usually for meetings and conventions, they book out more than a year out. In the year, for the year, that's why we limited to 100,000, because that was their best estimate of needs to be able to buy down that business. I will say that we can't ignore that meeting and convention group, because they are booking out a long ways. We still are putting a lot of efforts into that. What I will say is, within this augmentation, we're going to be putting a little bit of dollars into marketing the golf destination, which we haven't done, which I think is it's a higher ADR. People that have dollars to spend within the hotels and casinos, that is part of the augmentation, which we haven't touched. But we are not ignoring the meetings and the conventions by any means. As a matter of fact, we've got Mike and team are going to Chicago right now. And then so hopefully all of you will note, we will have our customer advisory board with those folks coming back into the place here in January. So it's a balance for sure.
Is it, if I may ask, Mr. Chairman, is our visitation, are we going to be up in or flat in this year, just total visitation to the area?
Too early to predict, but what I will say, in the January meeting, we have destination analysts that are coming to do that visitor profile report. So you'll see a big thick packet of that presentation, how we're trending since we restarted that. Look, I would say that we're pretty flat overall. But your point, I think ADRs help hold those revenues, and not only that, but increase.
Are we getting better, bit more visitation?
We're getting a better type of customer that's spending the money. That's really the shift that we're seeing right now. Is that and certainly the hotels are marketing to that's helping, and certainly the messages that we're doing to support what the hotels are doing is finding that customer that is willing to spend at a higher rate and certainly spend in the destination as well.
Yeah, I think the issue will come down to wallet spend going forward with this. But Reno was always viewed as a very inexpensive destination, right? Or a value. So it's going to be quite interesting as we go forward on this, and hopefully we can keep the momentum. And I think Reno doesn't quite feel as bad as a lot of other places could. So hopefully we've got a positive.
And Rick, to your point, I think part of that is, where do we put our dollars to find that person who has a deeper wallet, right? So that we support what the hotels are doing to help generate that positive lift that's going to help maintain room nights. Yeah.
Andy?
So I was pulling up the most recent October collections, because actually we're talking Q1, which is through September. So October as a whole was up 6.4%, which I'm sure Courtney knows that. From last year. Now, obviously, budgets are increased from last year, but that's a $2.2 million increase just in October. So now, 10 million increase over last year. Now, again, some of that increase will shrink based on the budget, not
right.
our fiscal year. But October came in strong, and I'm sure that we're seeing the same thing happening in November.
And I will say from the first 10 months that Courtney has reported out, we are on pace for a calendar year to set a record in total tax collection revenues. Not fiscal, but from a calendar year 22. Courtney, what was it last year? I think we had 420. We had 420 million in calendar year 2021. And I don't want to go on a limb, but we're on pace somewhere between 460 and 465 for this calendar year, which is a nice increase. Right?
What's the fiscal year final prognostication for room tax collection?
Two or
So for total room tax collections or?
Yeah.
total fiscal room?
Yeah, do you have a prognostication? Just,
We're just hitting the halfway point, so
yeah,
I don't know, Court, if you've done that or not, but I think that's
Absolutely. I mean,
it's a little early to
no, just seeing the trend line a little bit.
yeah, because I'm looking at calendar year because we're
Yeah.
near December, so.
Right, so with fiscal year, the finance committee, when we originally prepared the budget, we agreed to be a bit more conservative and then see how the first one or two quarters perform before revising the remainder of the year. So we originally budgeted for around 40 million. We're adding another 3 million with this augmentation. In Q2, we'll evaluate budget to actual results and then project for the next 6 months of the year. So we'll see the full year revised projection after we have our Q2 meeting.
So Q2.
Right. This is a little off the subject, but are we starting to look back? Because one of the things that we talk about right now is, and we hear this from some of our business partners, are like, oh, we're down from last year. We're down from last year. Which of course, Tahoe last year was so huge that, yeah, they're down from that, but what are they down from in 19? So we're going back to 19 on everything, and I know some of the data in here showed that, but it's always good to kind of look at prior year, but then and budget, but then how are we comparing to 2019, 18, 19, before the day it shut down? It's always good.
You know, a lot of it depends, to your point, Andy, is snow helps us. We need the snow factor, we need the summer factor, we need the fires were down, so it's hopefully, a little bit of.
September was a huge increase, in itself,
I bet.
but over the prior year when we were shut down because of Caldor.
So Andy, forgive me that it's calendar year, not fiscal, because that's what I have in front of me right now. In calendar year 19, we have $403 million of tax collections. 403 total for calendar year 19. Last year, we had 420 million. So even going back to FY 19, we're seeing a difference because of the ADR and that small growth. And like I said, we're at 407 through the first 10 months of this year. And while we didn't hit a record in July this year, it's the second time that we collected more than $50 million in any single month. So we hit 50 in July of this year, and 8 of those 10 months have been record-setting months. So very helpful, positive, very helpful.
You need a motion?
Yes, that'd be great for E3.
Okay. I would like to move that the Finance and Facilities Committee approve the recommended to the Board of Directors, a budget augmentation, the amount of $6,527,261.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Move on to item 5, committee member announcements, reports and updates. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to add or bring to the future.
I just want to throw in, if I can, kudos to Courtney, Trent, and the entire leadership team for getting the numbers done, the budgeting. I think the great picture that you guys hopefully see kind of where we're headed, and it's because the team does a great job. So I want to shout out.
Thank you. No, and you too, Charles. I mean, just a great story in general. I think of, like you said, I think some of this will make the announcement down the road, but very positive on the collection, very positive on plowing it back into the organization. And I think it's very strategic and thought out, and appreciate everybody's time and effort, and enjoy your birthday.
And then just to add to that, I think too, what's really exciting, that we're in a position to put money back into our facilities that is so needed. Because, we've got so much, ground to catch up on of the facilities. And by doing that, that only benefits the people who come in to use it, our visitors, the community itself. So enhancing the facilities keeping them safer, there's security stuff in there, and just, you know, upgrading those, helps upgrade our product, which helps drive more, you know, more use and benefits everybody at the end. So that we're in the position to do that is pretty exciting because it's needed and we're able to do it at this time. So appreciate all the good news on it.
I just asked one quick question. Trent, are we in good shape with the bowlers coming with everything ordered and the screens to be ready to
Yes.
kick off the bowling?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And an important one.
I know, where I'm going, that's going to be, I think. Technically on a calendar year, it will be our second quarter, you know, where we can see some revenues and Tom will get some residual off it, the interest and things. So just, we're on track, I hope, to be able to open up on time.
We're expecting all the equipment in the next 30 days, right?
Oh, great.
That's, it's been ordered, but again, supply chain,
It's
he's got to manage that.
Yeah, we've got about 85% of the projectors for the scoring that are already in, and we're starting to install that system. And then the large screen projector will be in the claim at the end of the month of December. And we'll have plenty of time to install that and get it tested and up and running.
Rick, that's one piece that's out of our hands that
I just appreciate the update, you know,
yeah,
because
we work with the city to get that in place as quickly as possible.
the
And now,
city's helping out. You're getting.
Yeah, they've been great.
From, from the city.
Yes.
really great.
When do they open it? When does
March.
it open?
March.
March,
And it's
early?
it's 50,000 this year.
Right.
Hopefully,
10,000 teams, right?
yeah,
Do you have dates?
it goes March through
Through July.
And now what they had to extend it twice already, into July. The good news is it's flowing, but it does fill the airplane. It does a little bit of everything. So hopefully, again, this so-called whatever if there's an upturn or a downturn in the economy, at least the bowlers always seem to residual, they don't see it, they get it. So hopefully that's good. Thank you.
It's a great layer of business. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Okay, comments from the floor? If we have anything from the public, okay, meeting adjourned. We get to do this. Yeah, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Appreciate it.
We'd stay on. Do we have the end?